5 huge mistakes everyone makes with Django. Number 1, using Django templates. Django is a very capable web application builder, and one of the features they include is using templates, where you can use Django's HTML templates to build out web applications. Now, here's the thing. They're not nearly as powerful as JavaScript libraries, nor will they probably ever be. My recommendation, separate your front end and your back end. Have an API and have your front end. Have your Django as your API. Use a JavaScript library. For instance, React.js. That's what I use commonly. But there's also others like Angular. JavaScript is such a powerful tool. If you want Django to serve your front end files, you absolutely can. I think that's totally okay. But separate them out. Call each other like an API. Let the front end call the back end. It'll allow for greater customization, greater abilities, greater dynamics in the website. Use the right tools for the right job. JavaScript is very good at front end. I mean, that's basically what front end is. Django, not so much. You're kind of stuck with some HTML. It's kind of a pain in the butt to add some JavaScript in there. Forget it. Just connect the two. Let Django serve the JavaScript front end. Connect the two like an API. And if you want more info, I've got other videos on that, and I'll have more to come as well. But tip number 1, separate the front end and back end. Let there be Django for the back end and a JavaScript framework for the front end. Number 2, not using serializers. What's a serializer? A serializer takes the JSON data coming into Django from the front end, the JavaScript front end, JSON data. You send JSON data to the back end. So the serializer takes that data and it validates that data in Django, and it converts that data into the database model object that it's tied to. For instance, if you have a user object, the serializer will take the JSON data from the front end, like email, name, phone number, that sort of thing. It'll validate that data, and then it'll send it and create it into a user object in Django. Now, the cool thing also, obviously it does all the heavy lifting, but also it does the opposite. So you have a user object and you want to send that data to the user, you can send that through the same serializer. Serializer will convert it into JSON data, which the front end can then read and use. Number 3, using unnecessary libraries. If it's such a small library, just do it yourself. Django is a web application, which means you want security and you want stability. Those are two very important things, stability and security. Now, if you're using a lot of random little libraries, what happens if one of those goes out? Or what happens if they make an update that changes everything and your application updates itself and all of a sudden it breaks? Or what happens if there's a security flaw in that library? Don't use libraries unless you need to. Now, libraries can be very useful tools, and for complex features and stuff, I think it's very worth finding the right library. Be sure to check it thoroughly, be sure there aren't any security vulnerabilities with it, and be sure it's being updated and maintained regularly. Don't use a library that hasn't been touched in a year. It's not worth it. It's going to die, and you're going to be stuck here soon rebuilding everything with another library. Find one that works well, but don't use too many. Number 4, they don't future-proof it, okay? When you constrain a Django application too much, growing it and scaling it becomes very, very difficult. I should know because that's what I do for a living. I fix applications and make them scalable. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people constrain the application too much. They say, well, this only needs to do these features, so that's all it's going to do. What happens if this client then someday says, oh, I want to modify this and add this feature on top of it? Well, now we're rewriting it and building it out to even get to the point where we can do that. The goal is to make everything as dynamic as possible. Your clients will love you. Your work will love you. Make things in a way where they can easily be expanded on. Make it scalable, future-proof it, think to the future. Number 5, and this kind of goes off of number 4 as well. And that is improperly structuring the database from the beginning. When you have a big application, it's really important to start with just database mapping. You should know how everything in the database is going to map together and piece together and work together before you even touch the code. Once the database is built, it's really difficult to change it. And when we talk about building scalable and dynamic applications that can grow and evolve over time, it's really difficult to do that if the database isn't structured correctly from the very beginning. I have a client whose database was not structured very well at all, and it's actually tremendously inefficient. Like, we have duplicates of duplicates of duplicates of objects in this model because of the way things are linked together, and it's tremendously inefficient. On top of that, to fix this, we're talking about a whole rebuild of this application. So once you build around something, the only way to change it is to rebuild it. So number 5, properly map your databases. If you aren't sure how your database should be mapped, find a database expert. And that is 5 mistakes everyone makes and how to fix them. If you have any questions or further tips, drop them in the comment box below. If you like this video, click the subscribe and like button.